I decided to watch the film Eternal Sunshine in a Spotless Mind. And while watching that, it was a pretty clear um, relation to John Locke's memory theory, which states that in order to be continued a sane being, you need to have a continued conscious memory from point A to point B. So that kind of raises an issue with the plot of the film where the main two characters, Clementine and Joel, end up getting their memories erased of each other. So they have an entire streak of life experience that is gone between the two of them. So it pokes a big hole in John Locke's theory. So, with that in mind, I came up with the thesis that without the continuity of conscious memories, we cease to be ourselves. And that was pretty apparent in the film. And I looked specifically at two different scenes and set of scenes. The first one being the initial conversation between Howard and Joel, where they talk about undergoing the memory erasing process. And secondly, the overall behaviors of Joel and Clementine throughout the film and what we knew about their personalities going into the film. First point that I address in the paper talks about how when Joel barges into Howard's office, Howard says to Joel that he needs to gather all of the things in his life that either Clementine bought for him or reminded him of Clementine. And he says specifically that he needs to empty his home, empty his life, and that will empty his life of Clementine. In this, we're able to see that it's no longer just getting rid of a memory. You have to physically detach yourself from objects of your world. And this is especially hard because we project our lives out onto the objects around us. And that's what objects are. They often have a lot of sentimental value, and that's why we keep them around, even when it may just seem like junk. So by having to gather up all of these precious things that Joel does in order to just begin the memory erasing process, it's already taking away part of himself, which is detrimental and further proves John Locke's theory. And one of the first things that you learn about the two characters are their descriptions. And Joel is a very shy introvert and very planned out, and he doesn't take a lot of risks or do the unexpected. Whereas Clementine is the complete opposite, and she is erratic and she makes brash decisions. And throughout the film, you kind of see that they have to completely change personalities. While their memory is gone, they don't understand what happened in the middle bit. So when you're reading a book, if you take out the middle chapter a few chapters later, it's not going to make sense, and you're going to have to really think about it and try to consider what could have happened in those missing sections. And that's exactly what had to happen with the two characters. And that in turn really changed their personalities. So Joel had to make some rash decisions that they would be completely out of his character. For instance, he, instead of going to work one morning, just left and called in fake sick. Clementine, too, she really changed. So instead of making really bold and unpredictable decisions, she started to slow down a lot. And instead of running all over, she started to go slow and think things through a lot more, which was completely out of her character because she was just trying to find that missing part of her memory, just like Joel was, but just in their opposite ways. Consistent still with Locke's theory that without that continued memory, you really don't know who you are at that point, and you are basically separate people. Without knowing how you got from point A to point B, it's going to leave you struggling, and you're going to be back in that scenario with the missing chapters in the books, just trying to figure out what happened in between those times. So, in the end, to wrap up, by trying to erase one specific memory that you have in your mind, you're going to end up having to take away a lot more than just the one memory, because our lives are so connected to the things around us that just trying to block out one section of your memory and then call it a day is not going to get rid of it. So you're going to really have to change a huge aspect of your life just to get rid of that one instance that you want to forget. And additionally, when you do succeed in getting rid of that one bit, you're going to be left scrambled, and you're not going to understand even who you are at that point, because there are whole sections that shape you and make you who you are that you no longer remember, and it's going to completely change who you are, which both of those in turn then still help the conclusion with John Locke's theory that in order to stay the same person from point A to point B, you need to have that continuous conscious memory the whole time.